Hi, thanks for joining. Welcome, everyone. I hope you just enjoy coffee and bagel and spend some time meeting other attendees. We'll be randomly selecting one participant as a winner for the $50 Grubhub gift card. The winner will be receiving an email from us in a few minutes, so please be on the lookout for that. We'll announce all three winners at the end of the day today on the conference platform main page, so please continue participating in Coffee and Bagel during each break throughout the conference and enjoy the opportunity to meet other attendees. The session you have just joined is titled ProLinkHFA Property Update Utility. As a reminder, you're on track 1, ProLinkHFA track. Before we start the session, I'd like to take a few minutes to cover some housekeeping items. First, on the right side of the screen, you have access to the chat feature. In order to use it, you first have to hit join button. After that, you'll see a little red dot notifying you of any messages from other attendees. Feel free to post any questions or comments throughout the session in the chat, and we'll try to provide responses or follow up individually after the session. And please note that your posts are visible to all other attendees. Also, on the right side of your screen, you have access to the poll feature. Throughout the session, 3 poll questions will be displayed one by one. So when you provide your response each time, you'll be able to see the poll result in real time. So we encourage you to participate. This is where you can download a copy of PowerPoint on the session page in the Attendee Hub. You can download anytime before, during, or after Sarah's session. So now, without further ado, we'll begin the session. So Sara, you can share your screen at this point, and please take it away.
Okie dokie, give me just a second.
All right, we can see it.
Excellent. Hi, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you're at. I am Sara Surprenant, and today we're going to go over some functionality in our system that we call the data update. And what this does, it allows you to update your associated portfolio property in ProLinkHFA after you've completed all of your intake on dev and TC deals, when you've gotten to the point where you're ready to create your 8609s and onboard from asset management, whether it's from dev or TC. So we're going to kind of go through how to update the portfolio property from dev deals, how to update it from TCA deals, and what it looks like when you do a blended deal and how that's going to work. Bear with me. So what exactly is our data update utility? It's going to allow you to take any data that you have on a deal and put it to a property, as I spoke of before, but you can find this functionality under utilities in ProLinkHFA. And like most of our products, we do have, security privileges that are configured around that. So only certain people can have access to doing that if you want to. And within your organization, we're going to kind of go over the happy path. And in your organization, this responsibility to make sure the data is updated during onboarding may be on your TC team or your dev team, or it may be on your asset management team. The happy path process would be, when you get in your information for your TCA deal, for example, and everyone in your TCA team has entered all the data for BENs, applicable fractions on your building, and you are to the stage where in 8609 app feasibility, at that point, again, in a perfect happy path world, at that point, you'd want to onboard portfolio property. And then you would have all the data you've recorded on your buildings with your BENs and your place and service dates automatically get transferred to the portfolio property to update those records with the building and the BEN data. Dev will update location information and other deal and entity data. So there are some nuances in case you already have your AM folks have updated some data in portfolio property, and we'll also address that. But the whole point of our utility is to avoid you to have to go in and manually update information from a deal to a property. I'm clicking, Ryan, I promise. So step one, when we're talking about updating portfolio properties with dev deals, the idea would be that on initial creation of your dev deal, that you would create a portfolio property to be associated to the deal once you create the deal or take in an application. Once you have all the information that you're going to have on that deal, at that point, you'd want to proceed to the data update. Again, when construction is at least 90% complete and you think you're going to be onboarding and moving it over to asset management. We're going to go over some of the information that is required for the data update or that might assist you in making sure you have everything updated in the dev deal to go to the property. Now, this is the important thing. Any existing data on a portfolio property will be overwritten with anything from the dev deal, and we'll kind of look at those fields. So again, it's kind of a process where you want to have everybody in contact so your dev team knows to alert the asset management team when they're about to onboard. Because if the asset management team has gone in and updated any information that also lives on the dev deal, it could be overwritten unless you have a checklist making sure what you're going to copy over and what you're not going to copy over. But yeah, the data update is like the great overwriter of data you might already have in your property. So it's good to have some kind of checklist or process to make sure that you're using this to the best of the ability of this to make your lives easier. So first of all, on a dev deal, what kind of data do you think needs to be completed that can get transferred to the property? Now, again, let me clarify. A lot of this is not required. This is just in case you want the data, you can select pieces, parts for the data update. But in this scenario, these are all the fields on the dev property that can get transferred over to your dev deal that can be transferred over to your portfolio property with the data update. And we have these, surrounded in orange to kind of show you. The other tab on that particular dev property screen that you can fill out is the target data, and that's going to be kind of population information. And the key here is if you do have more than one checkbox that's selected on your target data on your dev property, on your dev deal, it's going to transfer all this information over to the property as well. So it's not just you can only select one. Everything is going to kind of transfer over, and I'll show you what that looks like shortly. The other item on the dev deal is the edit dev location. So on the structure, utilities, and amenities tab, it's going to update the corresponding data on portfolio property during the data update. It will also overwrite any existing data that you do have on the portfolio property. Now, this is kind of a box that kind of trips a lot of us up when we're doing smart docs or we're trying to do a data update. If you have all locations same selected on the deal property, data is going to be pulled from this tab. If there are more locations on the dev deal than on the property, the locations must be first manually created on the property to make the update. So if you have, let's say you have 2 locations on your dev deal and you haven't created an additional location on your property, when you try to do the data update, you're going to get an error. So you need to be able to go out and do that and make sure you have a one-to-one relationship. And just creating the location record that will allow the data update to do its job and update the dev data from multiple locations to your property. The other option we have with data update is to pull entities from your dev deal over to your property, so you don't have to manually input those again either. You can select all entities or no entities to transfer from the dev deal to the property with your data update. And just kind of a good to know, if you have an owner on the deal entities tab, that is also an owner, the parent owner, the ownership tab. When we do the data update, we just want to pick one or the other, because if you pick the owner, it's going to add the owner to just the deal entities tab and also make it the parent owner on the ownership structure of the portfolio property. Once you've gotten that, all your dev data is in line and how you want it before you go into onboarding or transfer over to asset management, we are ready to use the utility. And again, that's you navigate over here to the utilities panel, you select update from the portfolio property menu, select search, and then your search deal modal will display, and then you're going to click on the one that you want to do. So I'm going to kind of bring up my screen over here and show you what that looks like. We're in the data update, which is under portfolio property folder in the utilities tab. And if I want to go ahead and take a look here, do a search on my deal, it's going to come up and you're going to see that we have it right here. This is the one that I want. The deal type is dev and it is associated to a portfolio property. So at that point, I want to click here. And then it's going to bring up all my options for me to go ahead and update the property with the dev data. So when we look at the main tab, what we can see here is we have the deal value column. That's going to display the fields that are associated to the dev deal and what they are currently set to on the dev deal itself, and the information that you would be transferring over to the portfolio property. Now, in case there are already values on the property, it's going to show you what currently exists on the property. So you can know, okay, it's okay for me to overwrite this. It's okay for me to overwrite that. Like for total units, you wouldn't have to overwrite it because it's already existing on the property. That's totally up to you. But all the other information that doesn't have a corresponding property value will be updated with the update. If you want to update everything, you're just like, let's just do all of it at once. You can click this little box, the select all box. It doesn't say select all, but we should know by now, if you've been in ProLink long enough, when you see that box, that's going to select everything in the grid. And then after you've done that, you'd want to click on the locations tab so you can decide what values from the locations tab that you want to transfer over to your portfolio property. So this is, let me make this a little bigger for everybody because it's a little small for me. So here we have the option. You see all the items on here, the site description, the population target, property name, universal design percentage. I can tell you that the, do we have adaptive reuse on here? We do not. I'm going to be proactive. I'm just going to select all. So we're just going to put everything over there once we decide to do the update. But next we're going to talk about the locations tab. So the locations tab, again, gives you a lot of information based on what we have that's currently on the deal, and then what is currently on the property. And you can see here, I have a nice like misspelling here. I'd want to fix that at some point. But again, on the locations tab, you can select all by clicking that button. And then after you've gotten that information updated and chosen what you want to update, we can go over to the entities tab. So let's update our location information and see what we want to put over here. I do not know why my locations information is not showing right now. I don't know if we're just having a delay with my system, but let me refresh and see if that helps us. And as you are all well aware of, this was working perfectly fine when I set up the data. Huh. We'll move on. We'll go over this again during our TC deal. We'll move over to the entities tab. So here you can see that the entities on the dev deal that I have the owner, I have the architect, I have a general contractor, and I have the parent owner. And the parent owner is the same as the owner. So again, like all our update tabs, On the data update, it's going to show you the deal value, what's on the dev deal currently. It's going to show you what's on the portfolio. Clicking select all is going to allow you to add everything. And if the owner and parent owner entity display on this tab, choose one, not both. And I'm going to show you why here in just a second. So to update it, all we're going to have to do is select this update portfolio after we've had everything selected that we want to transfer over. So on this particular tab, on the main tab, I'm going to go ahead and select everything. All that's going to be selected. Now, on the entity tab, if I select the owner, architect, general contractor, and parent owner, and I hit update portfolio, it's gonna yell at me a little bit. It's also going to ask me if I'm sure I want to do this update. This gives you a chance to be like, you know what, wait, I forgot. Let me go back. Let me not do this. You can cancel out of that if you want to. But I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then it's going to tell me you cannot add the same entity as a parent owner twice on the same property, because it's automatically going to make the one entity the parent owner. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and go down here and uncheck the parent owner. I'll go over here to make sure everything's still selected. And my location data is still not there. We'll work that out. So now that I have everything selected that I need to select, I'm going to click Update Portfolio. And it's going to tell you that it's successfully updated. So the way you can verify some of this on our entity data, we can see that we have the entities that have transferred over. And we have the data that is transferred over from our dev deal to the portfolio property. And we can also double check in case you're, make sure your eyes aren't deceiving you. Did this really update? Yes, it did. We're going to pop over into that portfolio property. And I'll take a look at some of the location data. I'm going to pop into the dev deal and just hit the associated property. For those of you who are familiar with ProLink, you do know that when you have your deals and your properties connected, that when you're in your selected dev panel, you can just go down here and click on portfolio properties to get the link to the associated portfolio property. And it is, again, worth repeating that you have to have a portfolio property associated to your dev deal to do that update. Whether or not you do that on the initial creation of the deal, or if you do it later, it's totally up to you and dependent on your process. So I'm going to go over to edit property and see what kind of information we have over here. Oh. So I figured out why it didn't update the location data. And we'll go over that in a minute. This is kind of a good example of how you can kind of trip yourself up if you don't do everything in the right process. So I'm going to click on locations because I didn't have a location added to this property. I did some manual updating before this training. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new location so we can go back and make sure this updates as expected. I do expect that when you're using the update for the first time, you might run into something like this. You're like, I don't know why this is happening. And you'll put in a ticket and we'll walk you through it. And, it's expected at some point it's going to be user error once you start using the system, and that's fine. So now that I've gotten that updated and we have the location that now exists on the record, which we're going to know because it's going to update this location to a value of 1. If I go over here back to my data update screen and I do another search to reload the dev deal that I was just working on, we're going to have that locations tab there. And I'll be able to update the location. And this is also an example of you can do the update more than once. If you do an initial dev deal update to your portfolio property, and then you go back and add more data, let's say you added more entities and you want to add more entities, that way you could do that. You can do it piece by piece, or you can do it all in one fell swoop. but always be cognizant of the fact that you're going to overwrite anything that corresponds to a property value when you do the update. So here now we have all our location data, not the location was on the portfolio property that I deleted. And I'm going to go ahead and again, click all and click update. And I'm just doing the location data in this example. So now when we go over here, once I refresh this screen and I click back in locations, we're going to have the updated information from the data update. We also call it the PP data update because I'm personally too lazy to say portfolio property every time because that's a lot of syllables. So that's a lot of energy. So we do just try to call it the data update. So now we have the same information that we had updated, that we had on the dev deal. What we did the update, it updated the structure, utilities, amenities tab. And then we can also look at the property entities and go, look, lo and behold, they are there as well. And the parent owner and their contact information has been updated there. Again, as I mentioned before, it's going to ask you if you're sure. And here's kind of an example of some errors you can get when you're doing the update. Again, depending on the process and if any data in property has been updated before. If you try to update with units that are more that's on the property because that's already existing, it's going to give you an error. And you should be able to kind of, see when it says all locations same is checked on the property, you need to go into that property and uncheck that so you can do what you need to do. And once you troubleshoot that error, like again, we showed you cannot add the same entity as the parent owner twice. We went and unchecked that and continued with our data update. So now we have time for a poll question. Ryan, that is your key to get ready. And here it is. And once he gets that up, you tell me when you've got that going.
Okay.
You ready?
It's up.
Here we go. All right, so that was 30 seconds. Ryan, are you ready for me to show the results of our poll?
Should be ready now.
Okay. Oh, we did it again, Ryan.
Oh, okay. So let's just verbally share. I mean, audience is looking at the result themselves, but for you, Sarah, one response for A and 4 responses for A and 21 responses for D.
D is correct. You can update your property with dev deal information. You can update your property with TC deal information, and you can update the property with entities information from either the dev or TC deal. So the correct answer for this one was all of the above. All right. So now we'll talk about TCA deals, which is a little different, but it's the same concept. Again, best practice for utilizing the data update is to create the portfolio property when you create the TCA deal. And you'll have the option to select this. Now, again, it's not the end of the world if you don't. You can always do that later if it's an option that you want to wait till your TCA deal is ready and they've issued their 8609s to send it over to asset management. You can wait and do that then. But if you want that in their pipeline to be, aware of when it is ready, you can create that when you create your deal. You can add it later, but again, get it out there so it's in somebody's pipeline so they know that eventually it might be coming. Once you have all the TCA deal information updated, just like dev deal, you're going to want to do the PP data update at that time. Again, if your happy path process isn't You have the TCA deal, you go through all the processes, you get your bins, you get your place and service date, you identify the data on the buildings. And at that point, you do create your 8609s and then send it over. All the 8609 data will be copied over. Now, if for some reason you don't follow that process, and I know that not every agency does it the same, but if you have where your TCA deal, you're not going to allocate, you're not going to generate your 8609s, but you want to start the onboarding lease up process with asset management, you can still do the data update. You just need to make sure that you coordinate with your asset management team and they know, you know, the bin data needs to be correct, or they can update that later. It's just the issue with the buildings. The buildings are going to overwrite everything on property if you use the data update for buildings, and that's got the most important information on it. So you kind of probably, you know, want to wait and at least use data update for the building information once you have that all updated in the system. And again, it's always worth saying twice, any existing data on the property will be overwritten if you have that checkbox selected on the data update. So a lot of the data from the TCA deal is going to be on the edit current stage data screen. And that's like our current stage information, things with the deal property name, everything we have surrounded here in orange, the total amount of units that are going to be on the deal. Adaptive reuse units, if you have that box populated, that's going to check is adaptive reuse as yes on the property, just so it knows there is one or more units on the property that will be adaptive reuse. And the same thing with employee exempt units. I got ahead of myself. I got excited about the adaptive reuse. All right, so now again, this is I personally feel the most important part with the TCA building information. So on the TCA deal, you're gonna have the information from here, but when you select the buildings, you're not going to see this information actually on the update. It's just going to be part of the building. So it's important to know what information at the building level you're going to be updating the property with, because this isn't listed out one by one. This is just kind of, this is how many buildings we're going to transfer over. So you want to make sure that whoever is updating the data to make sure that is correct before you do the onboarding, just to save yourself some time. The BEN federal minimum set aside and applicable fraction fields, they're the ones that are required in order for the BEN to be successfully updated at the property level and then auto-populate that BEN field on the building. If the BEN record already exists, then we will replace those when we do the data update. So there is some coordination needed in order to make sure your ducks are literally all in a row before you do this. Just again, it's supposed to make your life easy. So your asset management person, or if they're doing the onboarding and the data update, they don't have to update this information manually on the property. It's just going to be updated with the data update. Once you have your TCA deal data complete, you are ready to use the utility for the TCA deal. This is the exact same steps for dev deal, except for what we're going to select. You'll search, it's going to bring up the modal, and you're going to find your deal. And you'll see where here it says deal type TCA. So that's your key that, okay, well, I'm updating my property with TCA deal information rather than what we saw on a previous slide, which was your dev information. And then you'll just click on the row and that's going to take you in. So we'll go over here and give this a try. I will bring up my TCA deal. And then I'm going to go over here and search. And it's going to bring this up with the associated property as expected. And again, it does say that in red, only active deals are going to show up. So if you have a deal that's not showing up, it may not be active. Okay, so very similar to our dev deal value column. Now, if you're like me, when I first started doing this, I would forget if I get up and, you know, go to the bathroom or go to the kitchen and get a snack and I come back, I'm like, what was I doing? What kind of deal was I updating? It tells you up here in the header, just clear as day, deal type TCA. So you do have a point of reference there. It's going to list all the information that came from the TCA deal. And that is my deal type. It will show you what's on the property currently. We have the select all checkbox, and you can pick all of them or none of them. So let me bring this up and show you. This is the big one that we're looking at right here down at the bottom. You can see where I have that highlighted. Number of buildings. So currently on our property, we have no buildings. And the TCA deal has 4. Property has none. So we definitely want that. But for this example, again, I want to update everything. So I'm going to select all the buttons on here, and it's going to pull everything over to that property. Now, when you create your TCA deal and you create the property at the same time, there's a really good chance that some of this data will already be in there on the property. But the way that I set this up, this property was brand spanking new, and I didn't do that. So we could see the difference between what's on the deal and what's on the property. So once we're done with that, you'll notice that TCA doesn't have a locations tab. And I understand that has been a pain point for some people. That's an item we need to review and see how we can add that, because I believe the structure is a little bit different. So for the TCA deal data update, the only other thing you have is entities. And again, same concept as dev deal. You have the TCA deal, you have the part values, you have the portfolio values in here. You select all if you want to select them all. But again, with a parent owner, you just want to pick one or the other. So I will bring my screen back up again. I'm going to click on entities, and I'm just going to select the one owner and not the parent owner, because I have confidence my data update is going to make that the parent owner. So once we have all that selected, again, click update portfolio. It's going to ask you if you're sure. And then this is going to update information from the TCA deal to the property. We'll go ahead and do this in real time. Yes, I want to update. I really, really do. Now, this one takes a little bit longer because it's stubbing out the buildings, the bins, and making those associations. So it may take a couple more minutes than it would normally. So it comes back here. It says, you know what? We did that. So let's go make sure it did. We'll go over here into the TCA deal selected deal panel. And then we'll click on portfolio properties. It's going to give us a link to take us directly to that property. I'll click on that. We'll go over here. Now you can see it has 4 buildings. It has 4 bins. And when I click into a building, we can see all the information that was copied over from the TCA deal. Come on, little building, you can do this. So this is the only information we had on this particular building, but it did bring in the most important things that we needed to discuss: the place in service date and the building ID number. So that was auto-populated based on what you had on the associated TCA building. We had an 8609 on that building, and this kind of displays on this as a read-only example where you can click into that and then go back to the 8609, but that will associate it. The only time your property is going to be able to pull in that 8609 data is when the TCA deal is an 8609 app feasibility, because that's the only time you can create it. So we can go to the location data on edit property. Oh. I meant to go to entities. You can see how many entities got added. We had a lot of entities on the TCA deal, and it brought a lot of that over. Everything we selected. And you can see just the normal property entities tab has the 6 items that we selected. And then we have our parent owner that got pulled over as well. Oh, no, now we have another poll question. Hold on, let me go back because I feel like I missed something, that last thing. Again, the same kind of errors. They'll be a little different from TCA deal. One of the common ones you would get is cannot delete a building when the location has all buildings same checked. So what you would have to do is go back to the property, go to the location on the property, uncheck all buildings same, save that, go back and do your data update again. This is what happens. You get a warning when like the building is missing one of these items, the BEN, the federal minimum set aside or applicable fraction. At that point, it will create the building. It's just not going to copy your BEN information over, which is kind of the point of like, doing the data update is so you don't have to manually enter that. So at that point, you'd want to go back to the TCA dealer, whoever is in charge of the TCA building data, and be like, hey, we need this to be completed perfectly, and see what happens in that scenario. So now we are ready for another poll question. And whoops, I got excited. Ryan, you got this?
What's up?
All right. All right, Ryan, I am hoping like crazy that we can get this to work and you can show the results.
I'm just gonna read it for you. So 15 responses true and 0 response for false.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. Good job. Thank you all for playing along. All right, so now I feel like the rest of the session, how much time have we got? We got about 20 minutes. We're not going to need all that because this is pretty simple. When we talk about your blended deals, and I know that I heard during the pro quorum use cases that Danny had said something about how, creating blended deals. That seems to be something that's more common these days. I know we have people who are entering their applications that have a dev portion and a TCA portion. Kind of what that's going to look like is when you do your data update, and I will go over here and show that since I overwrote that. Let me go back over here. Chances are you're going to have your property, your TCA deal, and your dev deal that all have the same name that are associated together. So in this example, you can see, it's dev TCA, and the associated property has the same HFA number. So that's kind of how you are definitely working with a blended deal. So you can, again, it comes on process. Update process is the same, but if you have fields that are found on both deals, you need to keep in mind that the property is going to be updated with most recently selected. So if you have some data on dev that you have updated to a portfolio property, and then for some reason the TCA deal has the same fields to update on the property, but they're different data, if you select those, they're going to overwrite. So it's going to be the most recent information that you have for what you most recently selected. So again, same process that we went through. I'm not going to walk you through it again, but we suggest having some kind of checklist, depending on where in your process, who is going to be responsible for making sure that the data update is successful. And that can be something as small as just, make sure someone on the dev team has updated the location information. Verify the target date has been updated, add a description on what's expected for them to update. And then if you have someone, if let's just say, for example, I put this on the TCA deal, but you could put this checklist on the property. So once the asset manager knows that this is all ready to onboard and transition to asset management, they can go through the checklist and verify the information on the dev deal is where it needs to be. They can see any discrepancies between what's on the dev deal and the TCA deal. Or you can just have a list of like, this is what you want to check on the dev deal for the PP data update. And this is what you want to check on the TCA deal for a PP data update. And then turn that into a job aid or something based on your internal agency process to make sure that you're not getting rid of data that you need and that everybody kind of understands they're on the same page when it comes to transitioning. So now we have one more poll question, and I believe that we are done. What data is not necessary for the TCA building to create a portfolio property? Are you ready, Ryan?
Yes, it is up.
Thank you. Just really happy with Spotify. We've been threatening to do this for years. Okay. Ryan, I know you weren't able to update the PowerPoint.
So I will read you the result. 0 response for A, 3 responses for B, 3 responses for C, 3 responses for D.
The answer is the placed in service date is not required to update the property with the BIN. As long as you have the BIN number, the minimum set aside, and the applicable fraction on your TCA building, it's going to be able to create the BIN on the property. And the reason is, if you've ever created a BIN manually in ProLinkHFA, you know there are 3 items required. That is the BIN, that is the applicable fraction, and that is the minimum set aside. The place in service date is going to be on the building itself, not on the BIN record. So that is why place in service date is the one thing that you do not need in order to do to create the BIN with the data update. So now you all are very much smarter. That was great grammar there, I know, about how to use the data update. And it gives you food for thought for how you want to do your process with your dev and TC onboarding to asset management and how this can make your life easier. If you have any questions about a certain scenario, like I know we do have some agencies who have the TC information not complete enough to do a data update before they start updating their property. We can discuss, how to make this work for you. Just reach out via email or a support ticket, and we can see what we can do to make your lives easier with our data update. And Ryan, that's all I have. You can take the screen back. I don't know why it's not.
I share my screen.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for joining the session. I hope you found great value in this session. And as a reminder, copy of Sarah's PowerPoint is available here. And you can also come back and watch the recording of the session anytime. Even after the conference is over, you're able to log back onto the CBAM platform for the next 90 days to watch any of the session recordings. And the survey is available here on the right side of your screen. So please provide any feedback you might have on this session. You can type in any outstanding questions that are not answered during this session. And now for the next 15 minutes, we have one last coffee and bagel before we start the next session in 30 minutes. So it'll start at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. So you have 30 minutes, and we'll begin coffee and bagel about 15 minutes prior to that. So 2:15 to 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Please join coffee and bagel. and this is your last opportunity to mingle with other attendees and maybe time to say goodbye. Each room accommodates up to 6 people. It's just a small group of people to casually chat. And we'll issue the last gift card. We'll pick one participant randomly and give away $50 gift card after the coffee and bagel is over. So enjoy the break until 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and I will see you in our last session of the day 2 of ProLink Tech Live. Enjoy the break, and I'll see you there.